Well, we saw more riots last night across the country. It was a pretty, I would say it was a pretty decent showing for a Saturday night, which we've come to expect in 2020. Rioting is just something that happens now. And not in any one particular city, sure. You saw lots of stuff going on in Portland, sure. You saw lots going on in Seattle, but I mean, all across the country. Uh, Louisville still is burning. Although there the cops are pretty tough relative to a lot of these other places, so that the rioters couldn't do too much. But they keep playing this game where they go and hide inside these cucked Protestant churches, because I guess curfews don't apply to churches because of the First Amendment. Violates religious liberty, and so these are the kinds of Protestant churches that like have women pastors that are like lesbian, transgender people with rainbow flags around their neck. So I mean, they hardly can even be considered churches, but I mean, I guess they are a religion. And so I mean, it's just kind of a bitch move, in my opinion. But of course, totally within their right. I mean, I don't think curfews are necessarily like a good thing. I'm not mad that they can get around the cops' curfews. This is all such a dumb game. I'm tired of the riots at this point. They're just stupid. They're not entertaining anymore. They're not scary. I mean, I guess it would be scary if I was in it. Luckily, they're not rioting where I live, so it's not scary to me. But I don't have this fear that these people are going to achieve anything, because they don't want to achieve anything. They have no goals. I mean, I stand by what I said before about the BLM crowd just being useful idiots at this point. I mean, they're spouting off, nonsensical critical race theory stuff that nobody's going to buy into. I mean, I guess privileged white people are going to buy into, but normal people are not going to buy into this crap. And as I've said before, all the riots and all this unrest really isn't about racism. I think that it all comes back to the economy. I think that these are economic problems. There are very deep-seated issues in this country which are not being remedied, which nobody's even addressing. Nobody's talking about them, let alone trying to fix them, that are leading to this to these riots. It's not a coincidence that all these riots started after the lockdown and everybody was sent home from work and couldn't do anything and was cooped up in their houses for a couple months, and then they kind of went stir crazy and decided to go out and say, okay, well, now's the time that we have to resist the police, as if the police suddenly got to be so much worse. Although to be fair, in a lot of these big cities where you have strict lockdowns, the police did get worse, but these were not anti-lockdown riots. Ostensibly, these were anti-racism riots. And as I've said, I think that that's more just an excuse. That's how people are rationalizing their rage. But as we've seen, the rioters are anything but rational in their actions. There's no real attempt at justifying why smashing up some business is supposed to end racism. I think that the reason why you have so many people out rioting is because people are dissatisfied in their life. They're malcontents. They think the world is unfair, and I think that for a lot of folks that is a product of their lived experience. Because hey, in a lot of places in America, it's not easy to make it in life. It's not easy to better yourself. It's not easy when the cost of living goes up year after year, but your wages are totally stagnant to where in real terms you're getting poorer every year. It's unless you are improving yourself in terms of your income by a substantial margin, you're going to get left behind very quickly in America. And this, of course, there's lots of reasons why the American economy is hobbled as it is. But the main thing, as I've said time and time again, is the Fed. And the Fed's not changing. The Fed is not correcting any of its policy to stop punishing the poor people and stop rewarding the rich people. And during times of economic crisis, the effects of the Fed's policies become that much more insulting and obvious to people, even if they don't understand what's going on. They understand that something's not right. They understand that when the economy gets bad, the rich do okay, and the poor get creamed. And people feel that way now, even with all of this, stimulus stuff and the PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection Program, and the mortgage and rent forbearance. All of these programs, largely from the CARES Act, that were meant to alleviate the pain of the lockdowns and of this next Great Depression for poorer peoples. Even with all that, people are I think, rightfully upset and uncomfortable. Of course, rioting is not the answer. It's a completely irrational response. But given all this, when I think about, hey, what direction is all this going to take? Do I think that the riots are poised to get better or worse or stay the same over the next few months? And, judging by what's ahead economically speaking, and I would think that things will either have to get worse or stay about the same. Even if, let's say Joe Biden gets in and you get rid of the orange man who's supposedly dividing us. The suburban white women say, oh my gosh, America's so divided because of the bad orange man. He says mean words on Twitter. I'm so offended. My children, they can't look up to him. Even if you get rid of the orange man, what do you still have? You have an economic depression. You have people who can't pay their mortgages, who can't pay their rent. You have people who are out of work. And all of these programs, I guess you could say if Joe Biden wins, the presidency, then, the House and Joe Biden and Mitch McConnell will certainly be able to work out more bailouts and things for ordinary people, more forbearance, more PPP loans for businesses. And so maybe we can keep things about how they are right now. But nothing is going to improve. You're not having any of these resources being freed up. You're not going to have the economy start to heal. And of course, all of these things, PPP loans and forbearance, what are they? They're deferred payments. That's all you're doing is you're deferring payments. The PPP loans are loans. They're just that. Although I guess there's been a lot of talk about how a lot of them are getting forgiven, so they're essentially free money. So I guess let's just assume that they're going to forgive all of the PPP loans and say, okay, that's just free money. Forbearance is not free money. If you're getting forbearance from the federal government on your rent or on your mortgage, you have to pay that back at the end of forbearance. Either in the form of one lump sum, so for example, if you're one of these people who got 180 days of forbearance starting in March, which is about to expire, and then you reapply and you get another 180 days of forbearance, that means that your mortgage payments for an entire year or your rent payments for an entire year get deferred all the way to the next year. And so at that point, either you're going to owe all that money from the previous year. Now, most people are obviously not going to be able to pay in one lump sum. Some people, however, might be able to work out some kind of a deal with their lender or with their landlord to pay, additional payments, to pay, higher payments moving forward to try and start paying down that debt from all the forbearance. And considering that that houses and rent has been so expensive to begin with going into the whole pandemic thing, you think people are going to be able to pay not only what they were paying before, but even more on top of that after the end of all this, when we're in the middle of the depression, when things are not great economically, when a lot of these people, will have lost their jobs? Of course not. I'm not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel for all this. It's not just like you can kick the can down the road for a couple months and then things suddenly go back to normal. And so when all this, hits and gets worse, and it's going to happen in stages, it's not going to just all of a sudden one day, it's the 1930s again. This is going to happen slowly, but things are going to get worse. People are going to feel the screws starting to tighten on them, and the riots will probably intensify as a result. I mean, you think it's bad now with people being unemployed. Think about how bad it'll be when we have high rates of homelessness, because literally people can't afford to live anywhere. Cost of living, what have I been saying? Cost of living's been going up and up and up and up, and wages have stagnated for a very long time. Well, a low wage is better than no wage. If you have no wage, no matter how cheap the cost of living is, which cost of living is not going down, it's going up. That's the Fed's stated policy. The Fed wants consumer prices to go up 2% a year at least. If your wage goes down to zero, though, there's nothing you can do. You've got no money. But what you do have is a lot of free time to go out and riot and steal things and, try and make a living that way. And the only way any of this gets better is if you let the economy start to rebuild. If you let prices fall so that the costs of input goods, of raw materials, of labor, of these things, if these prices fall, well, then that creates opportunity for investors to come in and try to build new businesses, to start new ventures, to hire more people. That's the only way you rebuild a broken economy. But nobody wants to do that. People want to come in with their Keynesian stimulus stuff and just think, oh, well, we need to prime the pump. That's what we have to do. We need to prime the pump. Because you see, GM, they're just not selling enough cars, and we need to make it so that GM sells more cars. So what are we going to do? We're going to make it easier for people to go out and buy new cars. That's what we need. Utter nonsense, one-dimensional thinking. The economy is an organic, dynamic beast. You can't just try and get people to buy more stuff, especially when nobody can afford anything because they're not producing anything. I mean, the reason why things are going to be so as bad as they are to begin with is because we had a lot of people who are in artificially propped up industries producing goods which are of relatively little value. So much of our economy was, people just producing things that were of relatively little value to society, but were artificially propped up and stimulated by the Federal Reserve, by the government, and various agencies. Home builders and automakers being a pretty obvious example. But also restaurants. The reason why we have such a big restaurant boom in so much of this country, and the reason why that's pretty much all the jobs that were created since 2008. All the people who lost their jobs in 2008 and got rehired, they tend to work as waiters or bartenders or chefs or whatever, because the Fed stimulated the wealth effect by increasing people's assets, by driving up stock prices so people felt richer, so they ate out more. And so therefore we have more people eating in restaurants, and more restaurants are able to open up. What happens if the Fed doesn't stimulate stocks and make stocks always go up? Well, then people think, ooh, my portfolio's down this week. I better eat in. I better cook for myself. I shouldn't go out and and have that $20 steak at the steakhouse. And so you have less people eating out, and then there's less demand for waiters and bartenders, and then those jobs disappear. There's so many stories like this all across the country in different industries and things, and these people are going to be very negatively impacted. They're already feeling the heat, and that's only going to get worse. So I guess I should probably cut things off here before I just ramble on. So if you gain anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe, because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.